Hello everyone, good evening. Let's make a start. So let me know if you can hear me and how you're doing this evening. Hi Jean-Fabrice, nice to have you with us. Anyone else joining us this evening? Hello everyone, bonsoir, bonsoir à tous, hello. Let me know if you can hear me. Say hello in the chat box. Hi Marie. Hi Josiane, thank you for joining us. Hi Charlie, thank you for joining us. Hi Corrine, hi Zabe. Thank you for joining me this evening. So we have an exciting lesson planned for you today. So we finished our series on breaking the ice, and we're starting a new series today all about the history and culture of the British Isles. So this series is intended to give you some cultural insight, some background into British culture from a sort of historical and geographical perspective. And along the way, we're going to be learning some vocabulary and expressions. So don't worry, it won't just be a history lecture. It's just going to be a combination of cultural information as well as some useful words that you can use in day-to-day English. And also in other circumstances as well. So more useful phrases that you can make use of when you're speaking. So Françoise, hi Françoise has joined us as well. Hi Thierry. So perfect. Okay, thank you for joining us. So we'll make a start. I will say before we begin though that this series is obviously a bit different to what we've done before. So if you have any suggestions on things we could talk about in future YouTube lives, then feel free to send me a message at the end of this YouTube live and let me know what you would like to learn about the British Isles and British culture. Okay, so an important thing when speaking in English is using the correct vocabulary to distinguish between different entities. And what I mean by this is sometimes in English we mistakenly use terms interchangeably when they might not necessarily mean the same thing. And it's even more confusing for foreign speakers learning English to understand these differences if many native speakers don't understand the differences themselves. So to start off with, we're going to do a little bit of vocabulary on words and terms we use to describe the area that we consider to be the British Isles, okay? So that's our first one. The British Isles, okay? So this refers to, it's a geographical term rather than a political term. So the British Isles are all of the islands just across the Channel from France. And this includes both the UK and the Republic of Ireland, as well as some of the other islands that surround, okay? And that's also a confusing thing to start off with. So there is a slight difference in pronunciation between Ireland, so the country, Ireland, or the Republic of Ireland, and the pronunciation of island, which means a landmass surrounded entirely by water. Okay? So they are slightly different. We have Ireland, and island, sorry. And as I nearly made the mistake there as well, this is different from Iceland, which is Iceland, the country that's even further north from the British Isles. Okay, so Ireland, island, and Iceland. Three very similar words, but they can be easily confused. So as I was saying, the British Isles refers to all of these islands in this area but it's not necessarily accurate to say that the British Isles is interchangeable with the UK, because as I said before, the British Isles encompasses both the UK, the Republic of Ireland, and other islands that don't form part of either of those sovereign territories. Okay, so we have the British Islands, British Isles. The next thing I want to say is, which is perhaps more obvious to you, is the United Kingdom. Okay, so the country, le Royaume-Uni, is United Kingdom, the United Kingdom. Okay, and this is often abbreviated as the UK. Okay, so we have the United Kingdom, and this refers to the sovereign state that encompasses England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, okay? But doesn't necessarily include some other territories, which we're going to come on to in a bit, okay? The next phrase we have is Great Britain, okay? Which is often abbreviated as GB, okay? So you might be forgiven for thinking that the UK and Great Britain are interchangeable terms. They are often mixed up in day-to-day speech, and people will use them interchangeably, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing. So Great Britain refers to the island that consists of Scotland, England, and Wales. So it's when you see a map of the British Isles and you have the two main islands, you have the one closer to France and mainland Europe, which is England, Scotland, and Wales. And then you have the other island next door, which consists of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And those are collectively referred to as the island of Ireland. So actually, the Great Britain does not include Northern Ireland, which is why in lots of international competitions we have Team GB and NI, so Team Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Okay? So those are some important ones to talk about. However, there's also other places in the world that we might describe as British, but they aren't necessarily part of the UK. So the first one we can talk about is British Overseas Territories, okay? So British Overseas Territories is almost the British equivalent of dom-tom in French. So les départements or les territoires outre-mer. So it's more the tom part of dom-tom. So this includes only part of the British Empire that have remained under the control of the United Kingdom. So this includes places such as various islands in the Caribbean. It includes Bermuda, the British Virgin Islands. It includes the Falkland Islands. And it also includes other islands, predominantly in the North and Southern Atlantic. Okay, so also places like Tristan da Cunha and St Helena. So these are all islands that are considered overseas territories. Okay. We also have a final category which is very important to distinguish, and these are called British Crown dependencies. So British Crown dependencies, these are territories that are the UK or the United Kingdom is responsible for them. However, they retain a large degree of autonomy and they aren't considered part of the UK or indeed, for example, the Commonwealth, the EU and other organisations that the UK is or was formerly a part of. So these encompass three places. So we have the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey. So you might have heard of Jersey and Guernsey. These are the Channel Islands, which are just off the coast of Normandy in France. So Jersey and Guernsey, and obviously the other smaller islands that surround them. And these are crown dependencies. The Isle of Man is another island. It's in the Irish Sea, so it's between Great Britain and Ireland. It's a small island there that's also a British Crown dependency. Okay? Hi Evelyn, thank you for joining us. No worries. We've just been talking about some vocabulary. Okay, so those are some important terms that we can use when discussing the area that we understand to be the British Isles and some other territories as well that are politically or historically linked to these islands. Hi Delphine as well, no worries. So let's zoom in a little bit on the UK. So you might be mistaken for thinking that the UK, although a sovereign territory, is just one country as a whole. However, the UK is actually made up of 4 separate countries that have varying degrees of autonomy in their own right, have very distinct cultures and histories, and function in their own traditional ways, because the UK is more than just simply England. And most people, or some people, might mistake this or make this mistake about the UK. Even for that the UK is simply an English-speaking country. This is true. English is a very important language and is the predominant language of the UK. However, each of the constituent nations of the UK also have their own languages. Some that have been in the British Isles longer than English ever was. Okay, so we're going to start with England, as I can talk most about England, seeing as it's my native country. So England is obviously one of the countries that makes up the UK, whose capital is London. So we have England and London. Okay. And obviously the predominant language of England is English. Don't forget that we always capitalize England and English, okay? Always has a capital E. So we cannot write England with a small e, or English with a small e. Okay, so the next country is Scotland, okay? Does anyone know the capital of Scotland? This is the country that is north of England. So Scotland is north of England and also includes some other islands in the North Sea. So Françoise has said Dublin. So Dublin is actually the capital of the Republic of Ireland. So that is a different country to the UK. Evelyn has said Wales. So that's a different country as well, but within the UK. We'll come on to Wales in a bit. Yes, so someone has said Edinburgh, but they've misspelt it slightly. So Edinburgh is indeed the capital of Scotland. Edinburgh, okay? So Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. It's very pretty. It always comes up on tourist articles on some of the most beautiful places to visit in the world. I've been there once and I quite liked it. It can be rainy in the winter and cold, but it is also very pretty. It has lots of old buildings and grey stone that make it very picturesque. Picturesque, it means it's nice to take pictures, it's pretty. Okay, and so in terms of the languages spoken in Scotland, of course we have English, but we also have 2 other important languages. So firstly we have Scottish Gaelic, or Gaelic, which is a Celtic language. So that's one of the languages that existed in the British Isles prior to the arrival of English. Okay, so we have Scottish Gaelic. And we also have Scots. So Scots is another minority language in Scotland, which, depending on linguistic studies, there's arguments about whether it's a dialect or a language in its own right, but it's another language or a tongue spoken in Scotland. Okay, let's move on to, so Charlie has asked me, do I understand Scottish Gaelic? So you might have noticed from my surname, for those of you who know my surname from the online platform, it is McGecky, and that is because I am Anglo-Scottish, so I have Scottish heritage on my dad's side. So my surname, my nom de famille, my family name, is Scottish. Although it's unclear because historically speaking, there is a lot of migration between Scotland and Ireland, and so there are some names that are common between Scottish and Irish families. Okay, so if you see a capital M and a small c, or MAC, it can be a Scottish or Irish surname. I would say more likely Scottish, but that could be incorrect. So if ever you see an MC or an MAC, it's very likely to be a Scottish or possibly even Irish surname. Okay, I do understand a very, 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 very minuscule amount of Scottish Gaelic when I've learnt some phrases. It's very different to English as it's a Celtic language, but I've always wanted and I have been interested in learning some small questions. So yes, I do understand a little bit, but very, very, very little and not enough to be understood myself. Okay, so moving on to another part of the UK, we have Wales, okay, Wales. This is the equivalent of Pays de Galles in French. So le Pays de Galles is Wales. Not to be confused with whale, okay? So if there is an H, if there's the letter H, that means une baleine, okay? So the animal. If you have no H, it means the country. A good way of telling as well is that Wales is capitalized, whereas whale or Wales is not capitalized. So the W is a small w when we're talking about the animal. Now, does anyone know the capital of Wales? Does anyone know the capital of Wales? Who knows the capital of Wales? Okay. Chantal has said Cardiff. Yes. So Cardiff is the capital of Wales. So Liverpool is a city in England. Liverpool is a city in England. But yes, Chantal is right. Cardiff is the capital of Wales. Now, Wales is a country that is to the west of England. It's to the west of England. So Scotland is to the north, and Wales is to the west of England. Okay? Because if you go east of England, you end up in continental Europe. So there's nothing to the east of England that is part of the UK. Okay? And in terms of the languages spoken in Wales, again, we have English, but there is a significant proportion of Welsh people who speak Welsh or Cymraeg. So I have probably very much botched the pronunciation of that in Welsh. However, the language is Welsh. It's another Celtic language or a Brittonic language. It has some roots with Breton, spoken in Brittany in France, but that's more Cornish, another minority language spoken in the English region of Cornwall. Okay, so Welsh, Cornish and Breton have some linguistic links because people from the British Isles a long time ago migrated to the northern area of France, now known as Brittany, so the language was brought with them. Did you know that there's also a small village in a country that speaks Welsh? There's a small village in a country in South America that speaks Welsh. Does anyone know the country? A country in South America where one small village speaks Welsh. Ah, you're from Brittany as well. Speak Breton. Do you speak Breton? So there is a small... Ah, yes, you're right, Argentina. So a small village in the country of Argentina speaks Welsh because a group of Welsh speakers from Wales moved or emigrated to this village a while ago, and they still retain a relationship with this village. So yes, there is a small village in Argentina that speaks Welsh in the region of Patagonia. Okay, and the final, last but not least, the final constituent nation of the UK, or the United Kingdom, is Northern Ireland. Okay, does anyone know the capital of Northern Ireland? Does anyone know the capital of Northern Ireland? What is the capital of Northern Ireland? Great, you guys all got it. It's Belfast. Belfast. So Josiane, Dublin is the capital of the Republic of Ireland. So at the moment, although historically there's lots of political tension surrounding this, at the moment Northern Ireland is part of the UK, and the Republic of Ireland is the rest of that island below Northern Ireland geographically. And so the capital of Northern Ireland is Belfast, whereas the capital of the Republic of Ireland is Dublin. Okay. And so in terms of languages spoken in Northern Ireland, again, we have English, but there are also pockets of people that speak Irish or Irish Gaelic, which is linked to Scottish Gaelic. As I said, there's migration patterns between Scotland and Ireland over the centuries, and so naturally there is a linguistic link. So, capital or... So Evelyn, to answer your question, we say capital or capital city. So the capital city of England is London. The capital city of Scotland is Edinburgh. The capital of Northern Ireland is Belfast. So yes, in Northern Ireland there are some people who speak Irish, and there is also a small cluster of people who speak Ulster Scots, which is linguistically linked to people who speak Scots in Scotland. So it's another language that has similarities there. Okay. So that is the 4 nations that make up the UK. So each one of these nations has their own culture, their own language, historically, even if English has become the predominant shared language of the UK. And they also have different symbols and ways to represent themselves. So each of the 4 nations has their own patron saint. So this is a good piece of vocabulary. The patron saint of country is. So does anyone know the patron saint of any of the 4 nations that make up the UK? Does anyone know, for example, the patron saint of England is, the patron saint of Wales is, the patron saint of Scotland is, and the patron saint of Ireland, or Northern Ireland, is. Yes, so everyone knows, due to perhaps the internationally renowned festival, that St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland. So St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland. And Marie has rightly said, yes, St. George is the patron saint of England. Does anyone know the patron saint of Scotland or Wales? No? Okay, so the patron saint of Scotland is Saint Andrew. Saint Andrew. And the patron saint of Wales is St. David. St. David. So these are historical figures who have come to represent the nation. So they have come to sort of, they are celebrated on various days in the calendar depending on which saint we're celebrating, and it's considered a national holiday. So in England we celebrate St. George's Day in April, usually, I think. It's not usually a very common holiday, so it's not something we celebrate, yes. So Françoise has said, are patron saints a religious yes. Yes, so historically, yes, seeing as they are Christian saints, and the national religions of the four nations historically has been Christianity. These saints are rooted in religious significance because they are Christian figures. However, they, in some respect, I guess you could say they've lost a little bit of the religious significance because the UK, although still a predominantly Christian country, has an increasing number of people who are not religious or atheist or who practice other religions. And so these days are more national holidays, sometimes with the religious aspect removed. It depends on the person, but I would say they retain a religious influence, but less so perhaps than they did historically. Okay. Now, our last bit, we'll be talking about the national animal and national flowers. So the national animal of and the national flower of. So this is always very fun because these are other symbols that represent the UK, and you might have seen them in sports competitions. You might have seen them used elsewhere as well, on uniforms or in pictures, or if you ever visit the UK, you might see these symbols around. So England is represented by the rose, and its animal is the lion. So England is represented by the rose and the lion. Okay? Okay, and then Scotland, its national flower is the thistle, which is a purple spiky plant, and its national animal is the unicorn. So this is a mythological creature that represents Scotland. So Scotland, a thistle, and the unicorn. Although it's ironic as well that England is represented by a lion, considering lions have never really been in England. But hey, that's culture. England, rose, lion. Scotland, thistle, unicorn. So, Charlie has said the national flower of Dublin. Don't forget that Dublin is a city and not a nation, so that it would be the flower of Ireland, not Dublin. It's the... okay, so it's not necessarily the four-leaf clover, as far as I'm aware. It's a clover. The four-leaf one is extra lucky, but we also call it a shamrock. So we have Northern Ireland Shamrock. I think it's also represented by another plant, like a blue something that I'm not quite sure of off the top of my head, but there's the shamrock for sure. And they don't have a national animal in Northern Ireland, as far as I'm aware. And yes, so Chantal has pointed out that you'll see on rugby clothes, you'll see on rugby clothes and uniforms, they'll have these symbols. Okay, so the French for thistle is chardon, and unicorn is licorne. Okay, and finally we have Wales, of course, which is represented by either the daffodil or the leek. They're two different plants. Daffodil is a flower, whilst leek is a more of a vegetable. And yes, as Josiane has said, it is a red dragon, which can be seen on their national flag. So the red dragon can be seen on that flag. So those are some good expressions that you can use. We'll do a final test. So who can tell me the capital of Wales? What is the capital of Wales? That's my final question for this evening to test if you've been listening. Cardiff. Yes, well done everyone, Cardiff. So that is the capital of Wales. Well done, you've been listening very closely. So thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you've enjoyed this little cultural insight into the history of the British Isles and the various nations and sovereign states that make up these islands. And so I hope you all have a nice evening. And yes, be sure to have a look at this video again if you want to revise some of this culture, this cultural content, and also be sure to let me know if you have any ideas for things you would like to know about in terms of the British Isles, its history and its culture, whether it be about language, geography, customs, anything like that. So that's the end from me. Okay, so to answer your question very quickly, Sylvie, a leek is un poireau. It's a vegetable, le poireau. It's a bit like an onion. Okay, so thank you all. Have a nice evening. Bonne soirée et à la semaine prochaine. See you next week. Bye.